Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It has been an amazing week, y'all. It's another Trump-free week for the most part. Unless you watch the impeachment hearings, then your week probably was not as much of a Trump-free week. But I've been enjoying my time with not having to deal with that orange bloated bag of whatever you want to call them. So it's been nice. We've enjoyed a lot of board games. We had Valentine's Day in America this weekend. A lot of different things have been going on. And I thought it would be fun to do another Trump-free episode and kind of talk a little bit about some other issues that are happening nowadays. But without further ado, let me bring in my co-hosts, Buddy the Elf and Hansel the Engineer. Welcome to the show, boys.
Yeah, boy, yeah.
Flavor Flav up in the house, huh?
Flav, I'm sorry. I watched a little. Sometimes I get drunk and I just love watching that guy. I don't know why.
Really?
He says he gets drunk. Really, he does it just because it entertains him.
Is he still on TV somewhere?
No, it was like a rerun on Hulu or something like that.
Is he even still alive?
Yeah, because
like,
he got into a fight with
genuinely
Chuck D not too long ago.
Oh, see, like this is how little I know about a lot of what goes on in the world, at least in terms of pop culture. Because I'm just like, oh, that's a name that I recognize from some time in life, and oh, they didn't. Oh, okay, the Mandela effect is strong with this one, apparently.
It is definitely strong with that. But whatever. It was fun. Did you all have a good Valentine's Day? We had pretty low key here in Michigan. We had snow, obviously, and enough snow that I'm glad we didn't leave the house. But I'll tell you a story. So I made reservations at this place called the Belvedere, right? And this is it was a fancy place. I've never eaten here, but they have like places you can stay as well as eat. Well, you can buy two types of tickets. You call, make your reservations, pay for them. So I called, 3 weeks ago, made reservations. You get a nice fancy 5-course meal. Looks pretty good. Definitely was not going to be cheap. So I paid the deposit, for the two of us to go. I get a call last week about, Monday or Tuesday. I don't remember what day. Saying, hey, your deposit didn't cover the hotel room. So we need you to pay the rest of the money for the hotel room. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. I don't need a room. I just wanted to come for dinner. Well, we're only giving dinner to people that stay here. And then if we have extra room, we'll invite you. I was like, so I just paid money for these tickets that I can't use unless I pay another $500 for a hotel room. Yep.
And they called you right before the whole event.
The week of Valentine's Day. So in Michigan, we're at 25% capacity. So on top of that, you know how hard it is to find a restaurant on Valentine's Day at 25% capacity after our state's been shut down for 6 months? Yeah, that's pretty hard.
Yeah, we just didn't even try to go anywhere. We're going to go somewhere in a month from now. So I'm taking next month's the 15th. So 13th, 14th, 15th I'm taking. So that's Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday. So we're going to do our anniversary. We're going to do, a whole weekend. We got the kids figured out with the in-laws, and we're just going to finally decompress. It's something that's necessary. Everybody, if you can find a way to do it, if you can find a space and you can, make it work with family and friends, if you can just everyone you need a mental health day, you got to figure out a way to make it work. It's just something that's necessary. Like to keep the vigilance up, because we have the issues right now with like we know the vaccines are coming. We know there's going to be, it's not going to be this peachy leave it to beaver. Everything's going to be two parents, a white picket fence, and 2.5 children, which, I mean, it does sound kind of horrifying, but in the end, I mean, the WandaVision thing, right? You'll find that other half kid eventually, but like everybody needs to have just some way to decompress while we're waiting for some kind of normalcy. And so we're gonna finally have just some time, just with my wife's. How did you end up doing? Did you actually get into a restaurant?
No, I tried. Basically it was come wait, and my wife's like, I don't want to wait. And I was like, I know, but I haven't been out in like months. It's like, I don't really want to wait. So like, all right, it's your day, we won't have to wait. I was like, what do you want? And then she's like, well, we could just go wait. And then I was like, there's snow. And I just went on Sunday morning and I bought filet mignons. I bought some bacon, some fancy cheese. I made her fresh crab cakes. And yeah, I won't tell you it was under $50 because it definitely cost me more than $50. I mean, the steaks alone were way too much money. I did not know those were $26 a pound. Honestly, I've never bought them.
One guy at my work got Wagyu beef steaks. I don't know if you've ever had any of those.
Oh, yeah.
I know. He found them for like $35 each steak. I'm like, where? That's insane. But he found the place that had them, and so he gave it a shot. I didn't ask him. I forgot to find out how they worked out. If you got like some weird, bottom of the trailer when they dropped out the skid steaks or not. These are only 35. They were stuck to the tires. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't.
I'd be interested to know. Yeah, let us know, because I've always wanted to try that type of beef too. And it's one of those things, like one time I found you could bring it in, but it's, it was like going to be a $300-$400 dinner. It's like, no, I don't. That's a lot of money for me personally to. Yeah. I mean, I could get dinner.
I'm not a huge fan of
hotel for that.
I'm not a huge fan of like that fatty, that oily, that like it's not like a muscle 10 fiber meat steak. It's a very, very it's a different kind of texture. I've been told it's very succulent. It's very, I would say it's like a mixture between steak and foie gras is what I've been told. So I don't know. That's something that I want to try as well eventually with all the other things that I want to eat. I don't know, Keith, what did you guys end up doing? You know anything?
I spent the better part of my my Valentine's Day with my mother-in-law, waiting for roadside assistance to come to their vehicle because it just died while she was driving. So yeah, and I had to keep her in my wife's car because it's I'm gonna say -20, so it was like minus. Yeah, like -20 is about that range where Celsius and Fahrenheit starts to kind of like look almost the exact same. So yeah, it was about -4 Fahrenheit. So for those of you who don't really know, and I mean that was actually warm for the week we've had, but still. And so I sat there waiting for roadside to pull up for the vehicle, and we get home, and
so you're saying you live where humans shouldn't? That's what you're telling me.
That's yet another piece of evidence as to living where humans shouldn't. Unfortunately, if we all lived where humans should, there'd be way too friggin' much of us.
Yeah.
We didn't hit -20. There's plenty of room in Michigan for y'all.
Yeah, it's been ridiculous. Like the last week, it's all, well, I guess, okay, -22 Fahrenheit, -30 Celsius. So it's been about that for like the last week. So we've been going out and starting all our vehicles, and 3 times this week I was boosting my wife's car at 5:30 in the morning because it has this issue where the light will kick on randomly because it doesn't read that a door is closed, so the battery will deplete like that. So if it didn't run every like 4 hours, it ran the risk of dying. And like I'd get up at 4 in the morning, crawl upstairs, grab her starter. The most redeeming part of it is the fact that she has a remote starter. So I'd sit there and be like, come on, in the name of James Randi and all that is good. Oh, I have to go outside now. So yeah, I don't recommend that.
As long as you're not measuring from 0 to 100 degrees in Kelvin, we should be okay.
Not that bad.
That's dead and dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very
Hopefully
cold.
it never gets that warm. Maybe in our universal heat death it will. I don't know.
Well, when everything comes together and we're all back together again, yeah, I'm sure it will.
Entropy.
Be a-
Okay.
okay, and Hannah's talking dirty.
Yeah. So, what I wanted to do before we get going here, we're gonna do our answering conservative questions because we haven't done it in a couple weeks, and this one is a little bit less conservative than you all might think. Welcome to answering conservative questions. So it's funny because this one is a lot more tame. We'll just put it that way. This is a lot more tame. It's definitely something that came from the subreddit I'm in now, and I just thought this would be a good icebreaker conversation, right? That kind of goes into what we're going to be talking about tonight. So tonight I wanted to cover a couple of different things. We have an amazing science segment by Hanna about Mars. So I wanted a science segment to kind of break up all this politic or socialism guru stuff because we talked a lot about socialism in the last couple of weeks. We're also going to have a conversation about e-commerce and whether it's good or bad for the environment. And we're going to talk about cancel culture. Because if you didn't know, somebody famous just got fired from Disney, and there's a whole bunch of conservatives being pissy about it right now. So I thought, but before we get into that, I thought it would be good to talk about the question of the week. So the question of the week comes to us, and it says, to those who weren't always this way, how do you feel your beliefs naturally changed to identify as a liberal? So a little bit of context, for this specific one is essentially they're talking about, they claim to be a populist, a conservative, right of center individual, and essentially they are anti-elite, anti-big tech supposedly, and they're not going to be one of those we should eat the rich and tax the shit out of them, right?
It's a libertarian. That's not a Republican.
Okay, well, let's keep moving. They accept Black Lives Matter, and they strive to be anti-racist. They also said that they believe in the security of our nation, the security of our communities, and they respect all law enforcement. They have felt alienated by a lot of the social politics on both sides, hence the centrists. They don't care about religion, and they really haven't experienced anything in society that they care to conserve, right? But they believe PC culture can be dangerous to our personal freedoms if left unchecked, and they understand that they also believe that there is full respect that is due to everybody, but they also accept gender identity and sexual identification of whatever persuasion you want to be. So it's a mixed bag. They're not libertarians per se. That's not a libertarian. Maybe they have some leanings, but anyway. So I thought this would be good because it kind of touches on everything but the science topic tonight.
Well, I'll go first on this one because I have never not been a liberal. This is another thing that fits in with my religious views. Is I've never had a religious view. So like I didn't come from any place. Like I've always been kind of a meh. If anything, it was apatheist when I was little. But with I guess cultural beliefs, I've never been told any one group was bad. My mother's Jewish, my dad is Christian. My grandparents are pretty intensely religious, but they never made me do anything. I went to church with them a few times. My grandparents, we went to synagogue. I experienced that. I was born in the Detroit area. I immediately had interactions with young black boys and girls, and my schools and stuff bounced around. Like I don't know. I had a decent amount of experience. So like I never completely fit into any kind of conservative space. And so I guess the only thing I can say for this kind of thing here is, for me, it's basically education and experience has always, to me, been the thing that changes this. That's what it is to me. If you experience other people's lives and are educated about other positions, you're not kept in Dan Dennett's the religious bubble of ignorance, then you can find your way out. So that's how their beliefs change. That's basically what I've always worried about. And then there's, the idea of like the tolerance paradox and stuff, which will be applicable to the conversation later on. But that's, in my opinion, that's just a short view of where I I think that's how it is, but I'm not entirely certain because I haven't experienced it.
All right, Keith.
Well, I've kind of, I think I've probably talked about this almost ad tedium on the show. I did come from very conservative roots. I live in the conservative heart of Canada, which, if you listened to our wonderful episode last week, I talked about with Corey. I was raised very with a very political slant. Even up until like my late teens, early 20s, I leaned completely to the right because I thought liberals dumb, Democrats stupid, taxes bad, blah blah blah, government intervention always bad. And then I have no idea what exactly the turning point was. Although I will say that my going to university was a huge help because even though my first 2 or 3 years my teachers did enjoy having me around because I was at least a dissenting opinion, I started to realize that my opinions were based less and less in actual science and reason, and a lot of my points I started to get laughed at because they were just like the same dumbass points, where I was just well, you're not accounting for this small 1%. And then as I started to understand statistics and I'm kind of applied a little bit of that to my arguments, I was looking, I was like, oh, I'm arguing about an absolute 1 in a million chance, as though that's something that always has to be accounted for, when really we can just say that it's there and have some contingency to deal with later, but we have to focus on everything else. I was vehemently a global warming denialist and anti-socialist and bought into all of the populist garbage, but as it went on, I'm just sitting there and I'm questioning myself. And this is kind of why I take the approach that I do to dealing with people who are currently conservatives. Is it wasn't so much I was changed on the entire thing. It was a gradually I realized my arguments had absolutely no water, and I can a perfect example being with global warming, it went from, well, global warming is not so much a bad a thing as climate change, and then I'm looking and I'm like, oh, it's called global warming because the climate is changing into a hotter temperature. Oh, and then from there it kind of dovetailed. I started looking into secular humanism and atheism, and now I'm just sitting here and I'm like, who the hell was I 10 years ago? Yeah, so it was I was raised to care about the people, and by my parents who always told me you need to care about people, and I applied a lot of what they told me as a kid growing up, and it just didn't track with the way that the conservatives were behaving. So I was just like, oh, hang on, what do I agree with, what do I believe in? And I started to looking down that, and I mean, I won't say that I'm an expert on any sort of those subjects, and I'm still learning every day, but it's I can confidently say that I'm no longer illusioned by a lot of the conservative garbage, because a lot of it is just that it's populist garbage. It's all rejecting something because you don't like specific words, instead of understanding and thoroughly breaking down the arguments to fully realize the ramifications of included. So yeah, it wasn't so much a natural thing as it just happened.
That's awesome.
I think
You're
on my
awesome.
side, I think there's a couple of points. Like, when did I become liberal versus when did I become more of a socialist is two separate questions. Um, I think obviously I had a similar upbringing to Keith. Mine was also ultra religious based, so I had both sides of the coin. Throughout my whole family, there was no part of my family that strayed from conservatism or religion for the most part. Except for one uncle who kind of did for a little while, but I was pretty young. And now he's a religious nut job. But anyway, so I didn't have a lot of that. What I had though, and what started to convince me was the inconsistencies in the Bible, and then the inconsistencies in the Republican or the Conservative Party. And it wasn't that I cared who was who, because in my world, conservatives were you didn't have a choice. Like, it was, you're a liberal, you're evil. It was never a conscious, decision point that I ever was given. And so, like, in my world, it was just well, you said you're very for helping people like Jesus is, but Jesus only did so much. The Pharisees did all these other things, and here we are donating to a church so that we can have 3 pastors preaching to us who are paid full time to do this. It seems to me like we could probably be using a lot better use of our time and money supporting others in need. And some of it came from, I had a friend whose mother was very liberal and was an atheist, as well as could read the Bible in original Hebrew, right? So we debated quite a bit, and that's kind of what started to change my mind, was the discussion points of, well, hold on, why does my religion tell me one thing, but my heart tells me something else? And if Jesus is my heart, why am I not following my heart, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to me as an individual. And so I didn't walk away from conservatism. I walked away from the concepts preached about in all those local talk shows. I still understood the tenets, and even to this day, I still grasp the tenets of conservatism. Like, I'm a conservative when it comes to wanting to conserve Social Security. like that's something I believe is worthwhile conserving, right? What's not worthwhile conserving is holding poor people back. Where I went from being a liberal, or you can't see my quotation, liberal, to more of a socialist, is when I researched the ideas and understood that the majority of how things are happening are failing. And if we had not been put in all these binds by the Democratic Party, not only would we be farther left than we are now, we wouldn't have had a Trump era that we would have had to deal with. Nobody would have made America, racist openly again. Like, we're always racist, but we're openly racist now. And I don't know. So, like, for me, it's easy to say, how did I go from it? It's when when my beliefs no longer started matching what I was seeing. And then when I started to research and understand the logic behind how to create changes in society, that's when I went from, over to that liberal/socialist side. So there you go.
Yeah, it's experience and education. Like, you got out of the bubble. It's some of those seeds got and like, they try to keep you locked away, and it makes sense. They want to keep you. What is it? Get them when they're young. Is that what they tell young people when they're in? It's in the conservative party and it's in the hyper religious. Like, they got to keep you in the bubble until your brain is done forming, so that once you build those bridges, and it's super, super hard to change those initial assumptions on everything, then they can let you out free, right? Why do they send the Mormons out when they're 18?
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean? They're like, whoa.
Yeah, and it's funny when how much, and you're probably going through this right now because your oldest is what, 5?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your oldest is 5, right? So you're now going through the questioning phase more than just the why. So the 3-year-olds have the whys. The 5-year-olds, I'll tell you what, they got the questions, man, And it only gets worse. Like you're like they get it any easier. Like they're gonna ask you questions, but it's weird because I sometimes get mad and then I have to catch myself saying, hold on, don't get mad at them. I want them to question everything. I want them to question their beliefs, my beliefs. You know, I want them to do that. I don't want them to accept what I say is status quo. And it's funny because my oldest, you know, like last year, loved to debate the whole gun topic, right? He openly voted for Biden. He openly voted for Bernie, you know, like all these things. But I'll tell you what, he really had a hard time with this whole gun issue. And I said, you're just speaking conservative talking points, man. It's not like do some research. Here's some article. And I'll tell you what, in the last 6 months, we haven't had a conversation about it. And my buddy, who's also pretty liberal, but is a big gun nut. Like, I mean, he owns a lot of guns, a lot, like not just like, not enough to supply all three of our families and him still supply his family, right? That type of person. But we've, you know, like he openly speaks about certain control measures. He just doesn't like when his freedoms are taken away from things he likes by idiots. That's what his problem is, you know?
I can't remember what it was. Is Jim Jeffries has a joke. He says something. He's like, I can do coke like a champ. I'm good with drugs. I can just do them, but we can't have them because Karen took coke and ran over your children. Like, you know, some people just can't do it. So we can only have as good as the weakest links in our society, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Like, you have to treat the gun thing as part of that too. Is like, you're a responsible gun owner, but there's a bunch of people who aren't, and we have to consider those people having guns too. Like all of that stuff. I don't know. It's just a fun conversation. My daughter's like, my oldest she's not so much into the why, like questioning the reasoning behind, because a lot of times it's like, why does this do this? And then I open my phone, I read something quick, and then it turns into daddy lecture hour, and they glaze over and they just wander away. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go like make an airplane or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's the last time I questioned Dad on something. God damn it. You know,
well, that's the thing. I try not to be like this, like Socrates, Aristotle jerk walking around platonically, you know, delivering eulogy, like eulogizing, and it's like that kind of makes it a little difficult because like I have a tendency to get on a roll.
Yeah, I won't lie and say I don't either, because if I start a soapbox, it's hard to get off it. You know,
and you can see the rolls like,
yeah, like that. Thanks, buddy. But you know, it's funny because I've had to temper my disillusionment of why they're questioning over the last years, right? You know, because it's a hard thing. It's honestly really hard sometimes to not fuck around and find out, because that's what you think about, right? You think about those things, you know, when your kids are asking you, you're like, damn it, why are you questioning me? And when they question you on like, why do I have to go to bed at 9 o'clock instead of 10? Right? And it's like, oh my God, why are we having this conversation? You've always gone to bed at 9 o'clock during a school week. But, you know, like, and tonight we had to have a conversation because we were playing the new Mario game that came out, Bowser's Fury or whatever. And
that looks pretty sweet, dude.
It's fun. It is pretty fun, actually. And my daughter is like, well, we just got to do these few things, Dad. And I'm like, yeah, but we could save it and do it tomorrow because that's how this thing works. It's not like the old Nintendo system where you had to like.
Oh, you had to write down the like 85 letter thing.
Yeah,
the Metroid
you know, like,
code.
When I was growing up, that was a sin. You know, like when your parents came down, they're like, "It's done," and you're like, "No, I just need like 10 more minutes.
I know.
I got to level 5. I've never been there." And they were like,
That's where the panic quick saving stuff started. When you were always quick saving because you never know when you were gonna get like yanked off, or like a phone would ring in the house and it would kill the internet connection and it would throw the phone line because there was only one line in the house. Oh my God, that was the brutal. So,
you know what the funny thing was? My dad would sometimes, if we were playing Nintendo at night, have me leave it on and tell me I could come back the next day. And all he was doing is using it as a skip ahead point. He would have to go back. So like in Mario, you couldn't always save, you know, the original Mario, you couldn't save. So he would just save it and he'd use my stuff to practice on. And then I'd come down in the morning all excited, ready to play, get ready for school. And it'd be like, Dad, what happened? Oh, I accidentally turned it off, son. Like, what the fuck?
My old man used to play Metroid, and he would take a piece of computer paper for each room when you went to each room, and depending on how many rooms there were, we had the map. We had the whole game on the floor. Like it was like, of course, this is a machinist and an engineer. And this is how we think. And this is our brains. And so I knew where I knew where Ridley was. I knew where every bomb and missile was. I knew where everything was. We had the Brady games game book before they existed. And we taped them all together. My mom was taping the squares, and my dad's like, "Argh!" And we were playing. It was one of the most like early formative memories of like the good of video games that I had when I was younger, because like he didn't like any other game but that one. And then when he beat it and it turned into the suit came off and it turned into a girl, he was like, ah! It was just blew his head off. It blew his head completely off, because like we had the good ending where you get the girl in the bikini. You have all of so you get Samus in a bikini and Samus, and like that was like a exploded. Oh man, that was insane. Those are really good memories. But yeah,
I was going through some old boxes because we're trying to do some cleanup here, and I found my Game Boy Advance version of Metroid Fusion.
Dude.
So
the run, jump, shoot in an angle up into rooms and blow up.
Oh yeah.
I love my Advance.
I was helping my aunt move some stuff around a little while ago, and she gave me my aunt who passed away her old Nintendo DS, which can play Game Boy Advance games. So I've been playing it on that because I'm just like, oh god, I remember this. Oh, it's so bad but so good. And do you know how many like emulators there are online for these now? Like holy shit. Well, it's because you can't find the games anywhere, right? At least not for a reasonable price. And everybody loves the nostalgia.
Yeah. I used to emulate the Super Nintendo and all that stuff. That stuff's really cool. We should do like a retro game episode and just talk about games. That'd be fun.
Yes.
That'd be fun, and that way we can get on topic again.
My old man never got too big into those games. At least not the ones that I played. I would kind of get into the ones that he would play. There was one that he got my brother and I into called Crusader No Remorse. It was like an old DOS game. Yeah. So much fun. But what my dad would do, that's kind of in line what you were saying there, Tanner, is my dad would do that with my brother and I's Lego when we got some for Christmas. After my brother and I would go to bed, if it was unopened, he'd open it and build it, play around with it, take it apart, put it back, and go to bed.
Hey, at least he was nice and took it apart.
I thought it was hilarious.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah,
I do enjoy building my daughter's Elsa castles. It's not terrible.
Yeah, as you get older, the Legos become a lot more fun. Because this shit we would get as kids, like I remember we had generic pirates, right? You know,
dude,
and generic. You remember that moon thing?
I have a huge
with the big blue black tires on it.
Yeah.
Oh man, my parents. That was the only gift I got for a whole year because it was so damn expensive. That was my Christmas and birthday gift.
I have a giant Rubbermaid container about half full of just blocks. I had some of the more advanced ones, like when they started making cool shapes, but it was just blocks. It's just squares. We made Jeep and houses and buildings and whatever. And my daughters are like, they love those blocks, but then they're like, we're gonna go play with our new blocks and have all the cool shapes and stuff. Like it's completely different now. Like it's insane how versatile and different all the pieces are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It is. I'll tell you what though. I mean, my kids, I gave all my Legos to my brother when I moved out. Never should have done that. They're worth a fortune. I had same thing. I have like my mom has like 2 or 3 tubs of that shit. Like when I moved out, and they're all my brothers now. Which is fine because he passed them on to our adopted brother, and like he loves Legos. And the kid's got a little bit of an issue with like relating to people, but I tell you what, he loves building things, and he loves because when my daughters come over, like for him,
they play. They play.
Oh yeah, and like they build crazy things, and that's the one thing he'll sit down for because he has ADD really bad. Like it's bad, but he'll sit for Legos. Like you buy him a Lego for Christmas or his birthday, he'll sit there and build it. When he gets angry, he'll hit the table, look at you, and be like, "Would you like some help, Jay?" Yes. Okay. Good. I'll help you. And we get, we can
That's
just get it.
cool.
Like I could get him Legos every time, and he likes it. And it's the same way. I bought my boys Legos, and now my daughters play with them. And we have Harry Potter sets that are out of print, rare, all sorts of crazy shit. And my daughter is now getting into Harry Potter. So she spent this weekend. She spent hours
Building them all.
sorting all the Legos, looking for all the Harry Potter Legos.
Man, that's awesome.
Jesus.
Anyway,
Lego's awesome. I think Lego's one of the better toys.
Oh,
they are.
absolutely.
They're the one you can accept the price tag for. And go like, don't really want to pay this much for this shit. I don't. It doesn't need to be this populist shit. But I'll tell you what, I'll pay the little extra because the kids like it, and it pushes that boundary. Like that engineering.
It's a Steam toy.
Yeah.
It's a Steam toy. It is.
Yeah. And it's genius. Like we're all dumbasses for not jumping on that bandwagon when we were kids. Like we should be selling like Lego type things now. We should have created the next one. Anyway, yeah, and the funny thing is my daughters are not into Star Wars, right? But my boys still are. And for Christmas, my son's like, well, if you could get the Mandalorian one with the Baby Yoda, that would kind of be cool. I was like, are you going to put it together or just let it sit in a box on your shelf? I was like, I'm not trying to be a dick. I guess if you want me to spend the $75 or whatever as part of your Christmas gift, fine. But your sisters are going to be in there trying to... They just want the damn Baby Yoda out of it. That's all they want. And it's not even his real name. His name's Grogu. So it's not even his fucking real name. But everybody calls him Baby Yoda just to piss Dad off. But I'll tell you what, like, in the end, he didn't want that. Like, in the end, he's like, all right, I'd just rather have a Switch game or something else, that my sisters aren't going to steal. Because it's like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. When you have unopened boxes of Legos, it's going to be really hard to control the children from going in there and building them for you. Like, it's
like the 40-year-old virgin with all the, like the 40-year-old virgin with all the action figures that never came out of the box. Like,
yeah.
Come on.
But speaking of Baby Yoda and Star Wars, you heard what happened last week, right?
I did.
Yep.
I did not know the history, so it took me a while to just kind of learn about this.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So somebody was let go from Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Gina.
That's a nice segue, by the way.
Huh?
That's a really
It's definitely one of his better ones.
We're like a professional segue. It's like we know what we're doing.
All right, way to ruin it with that. Anyway,
Yeah, get all meta.
all right. Jesus, now you threw me off my game. Gina. So Gina has been known for her controversial tweets, and sometimes it's not been as much her tweeting as her liking other tweets. And like I'll give the example I can give is she likes and I can't remember the name of the guy. Hold on, it's on my phone. It's a picture. Hold on, I'll find it. But there's this guy that she does all the time that she likes their tweets and sometimes retweets them. And essentially, the guy's name is the Bradford File, right? And he posts all sorts of conservative garbage. But essentially, his thing is he says America does not have a systematic racism problem. America has a violent leftist extremism problem.
God.
You are more likely to be assaulted for being a Trump supporter than
False.
for your race. Now, I will say her not tweeting that doesn't mean 100% she endorses the whole thing, but you can't go like tweets like that and then tweet out basically comparing Democrats to Nazis because of cancel culture. Is what she's saying, and get away with it. And this is especially if your employer has told you to stop doing this shit. You're a public figure. Do not do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So did you guys see the post that I guess was the one in question?
Where she was talking about, how Americans deserve
she
a safe
didn't.
and fair election.
No, the one that I was told that was the one was a picture of a Jewish woman being like stoned by young children in Nazi Germany, or at least in Germany during the time of the Nazis as they were gathering power and gaining speed. Like that was like it was like a sharing of a meme or a picture with a bunch of graphics. Is that what you guys saw? Was the picture of like the one that was like the the linchpin, or no? Because So basically, what I saw it was a description of. So it's the reason why it was confusing for me, and so like I didn't know about the history. I just saw this picture, and they were saying that this is the image that she shared, and it was supposedly I didn't know any of the information on the image. It was a woman running, and there were young children like throwing rocks at this woman, and the image and the description basically said that like the Nazis didn't come to power just by strength and power, that the people themselves were also, they hated the Jews and like the community and stuff like that. So it was basically saying that the people of Germany also were being horrible to the Jews, and that let the Nazis rise to power by voting for them, whatever. It was and so like I was like, well, that's kind of true, and I didn't know anything about Gina Carano's history of like supporting these, relatively harsh conservative, and then actually liking and sharing some things that were obviously ridiculously terrible. And I heard she actually had some like anti-vax stuff and some like, and so like I didn't know anything about her history, but like that one image that I saw, I was just like, well, yeah, the culture itself was problematic, and that the people who were being really loud and being aggressive and negative and crystal knocked, that wasn't the Nazis, that was the people in the city who were finally just attacking Jewish people. So like that image, I saw that and I was like, well, I don't know if this is enough. And so I looked a little bit more and I was like, yeah, there's a problem here. It's a recurring theme. But like, I was just curious if you guys saw that image, because just seeing that one thing alone, I was surprised that was like the one, because it almost seemed like there was people that were kind of misunderstanding the actual meme itself. And like, yeah, what she was doing was, regressive and anti-Semitic to a certain degree, like kind of like comparing that culture to the Democrats and all that kind of stuff. But like, I don't know. When I saw it, and I was just like, took a minute. I was just curious if you guys knew of that or saw that at all, because that was the only thing that gave me pause at all in this entire thing.
No, I mostly just knew about her promoting the election bullshit. And that,
of course.
Reading up a bit about that, and I was just like, come on, like you were doing really well. Like all you have to do is not say a thing. And like, if you want to say that in your circles, with your close friends, hey, whatever, I don't care what opinions you have. But if you're gonna put bullshit like that out, and at a time when shit like that is gonna get you in trouble, at that point you're just deliberately trying to provoke a response. And congratulations, a response was provoked. Now you've lost a lot of jobs. The big boy Benny Shaps is all up in your shit now, even though you could like fold him in two and could use him as a dumbbell on one side, because she did used to be an MMA fighter, and Shaps is 10 pounds soaking wet, something like that. He's siding with people simply because it's going to get a response. Like, to me, that just doesn't make sense. Like, all you're doing is just masturbating, basically. It's like, I get to be provocative. I'm going to be provocative. I'm going to get in trouble and have to pay consequences, but I'm going to be provocative about it, and I'm going to pretend to be surprised because I have to pay the consequences. Like, I just, it's frustrating, and I don't understand it. My brain's trying to eat itself to see what's going on, and it's not working. It's not happening.
Yeah, and I don't know. I did not. I'll be honest, I only saw it when I heard she got canceled. That was it. Like, I never pay attention to a lot of famous people's Twitter unless they're like specifically part of the I don't know, political movement usually,
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, one of her latest interviews, guess what magazine, I guess, online magazine it was.
All I know is she went and gave Big Ben Shapiro a big fat hug. That's all I know.
She does now. She was on the Federalist though recently.
Oh, there you go.
Now, I'll be honest, I didn't listen to it. It could be
she's gonna run for governor of Texas.
It could be a fair interview. I mean, let's be honest. None of us have listened to it, But she also goes very heavily into the anti-trafficking thing, which, again, she's spitting some of those lies. And again, I don't want to spend too much, but the big thing is she's retweeting certain things. So, for example, in January, at the beginning of January, she tweeted this video. And here I'll bring it up. I don't know. Maybe we'll get banned for this. I don't know. This dude's got some views. Hold on.
Cringing. Extended cringe. Oh God.
I convince you that common sense and basic intelligence is hate speech. I act like I'm making you more kind, but I'm really just making you more weak. Instead of letting your kindness come from actual acts of kindness and respect, I get you to virtue signal fear and anger and call it kindness while denying your intelligence and making yourself dumb enough to not believe reality. My inclusivity movement is built on a solid foundation of rejecting people who aren't inclusive.
Yeah, I literally hate you because you voted for Trump.
That might seem like the opposite of inclusive.
So
that guy used to do all these like weird like parody things of like being super nice hippie stuff. Like I remember when he first started off, he was like warm and like it was like, oh, it's funny, sort of. Hey, I remember he went just far hard. Okay, anyways, continue. I could.
So whatever. I mean, I don't know enough about. I'll be honest. I don't know anything about that guy, other than he shows up all over the place. But if you go to her Twitter, that's a recent tweet. So she's tweeting these things. This is not like. So this is not her just randomly, one time only.
Well, that's what it was. I looked into it because like that I found that image and basically what it was is she was saying that the people in the culture were throwing rocks at the Jewish people, and that by being aggressive and by being that absolutely negative or whatever, that was the way that the Nazis came to power so that they could easily round up the Jews, essentially saying that the people in the culture were throwing rocks at the Jews and that allowed the Nazis to grab those people and take them away. And she's saying, how is that any different from hating someone for their political views? So she's saying that the young people who were brainwashed into hating Jewish people are them hating the Jewish people is very similar to the way the Democrats treat the conservatives for having a different political view. That's her comparison. Which so like it's really obviously, it's obviously problematic. And so like,
and it very much betrays how uninformed people are about what happened. Like there was a systemic campaign of anti-Semitism. Not only that, and it was built on anti-Semitism that had been around for how many millennia? Has that been going on? How many millennia has everybody been hating on the Jewish people and using them as a scapegoat for all the evils in the world? So I'm really getting sick and tired of everybody on the right who's sitting there being all, oh, this is what they did for the Nazis. No,
we're the new Jewish people, like, or whatever. Like
all it is just it's this victim complex. It's this need to be a victim that they're constantly accusing everybody of doing. Yet you can't go more than 3 steps without them bringing it up, without them sitting there going, "Oh, haha, can't joke about this."
Well, or that they'll do the same thing. They will do the same thing to Muslim people or immigrants from Latin America. But when you do it, so I mean, I can't take them seriously.
I think that's like the point here, right? That's why I wanted to start off with that, because there's a lot of people, complaining about Gina, complaining about Disney firing her. Was it a one-time thing? Should it be something that happens? That type of thing. And I think what people don't understand is that what is cancel culture, honestly. Now, I shared something that essentially says there is not really a such thing as cancel culture, and I'm open to debate. If you would like to debate me on it, you're welcome to. I'm hoping, and again, we're already 40 minutes in to the show, so I don't know. We might have to cut the last segment depending on how long this goes. But I think this is very important. I say this because, essentially I've been, people have questioned me as an individual for posting this and saying, well, you can't tell me there's not cancel culture, Chris, because look at this example and look at that example. And, oh my God, this, and that. But what the idea is racists are everywhere, right? There is no such thing as cancel culture. It's just, right, in my opinion, it's a right-wing euphemism for people
It
that don't
is.
want to be held accountable. Now, let's talk about that a little bit, because that's what the fuck I wanted to talk about. I don't actually care. I'll be honest, I think Jean is a good actor. I think she brought a very great deal of talent to the show.
She did. And
I do think Lucy Lawless as her replacement is a good idea.
But before we step away from this, like, another thing that really kind of frustrates me about this is the fact that I don't want to say that, you know, she's reversed her stance on things, but she's been less douchey in her takes on things. So she got called out for she put boop bop beep in her handle to mock people for the pronouns thing. And then a little while later, this is actually in September, she said, Pedro and I spoke, and he helped me understand why people were putting them, meaning pronouns, in their bios. I didn't know it before, but I do now. I won't be putting them in my bio, but good for you all who choose to. I stand against bullying, especially those vulnerable in freedom, the most vulnerable in freedom to choose. And I could live with that. I wouldn't dare say that, you know, she'd absolved herself of that sin, because it was still there, and I'm not somebody who identifies as trans, and that's not my call to make. However, I see that as, you know, potential for somebody to, you know, learn from being a shithead to be less of a shithead. And, well, now she's being all, ooh, Benny Shaps is my best friend. So I just like saying that.
The cancel culture used to be, it wasn't called the cancel culture. It's like, this is just a new thing for a thing that used to exist. Like, if you said something overtly racist, either you said it quietly and hidden in a small room in a basement of whatever place, or it was like a slight dog whistle, but it was not as open and overt as it is now. And society itself is working its best to try to cancel, you know, using that word, but it's working. It's trying its best to use the tools that it used to use. When a guy in a skinhead Nazi tattooed body showed up, we would remove that person from our society, because we had all collectively, majority, decided that was bad behavior that we didn't like. Now we're trying to do that, but they've created hashtags and names for it, and we've essentially reached the tolerance paradox. And so I don't know if you guys are familiar with it at all, but that's where we are now. Essentially, it's the tolerance paradox. For anyone that doesn't know, it's the tolerance that states that, brought by Karl Popper, is if a society is tolerant without limit. So essentially, we let free speech, just complete and total free speech. In the end, its ability to be tolerant is eventually seized and destroyed by the intolerant. So, like, there has to be some kind of policing measure that we work on. It doesn't have to be this absolutist thing, but like, there has to be some kind of policing measure. And we used to have it. We used to remove Klansmen and, you know, Nazis and stuff from places, but you know, our society has also destroyed the Black Power movement, and we didn't completely remove and isolate and destroy the White Power movement, hence where we are now. So, like, there's a variety of things as far as our societal structure that didn't quite work as good as we think it did, but giving it a name like cancel culture, ooh,
that's just a way of creating another boogeyman. And another thing that really gets me, that is really, I'm struggling to understand here, is that the same people who are sitting here going all, you know, oh, cancel culture, it's a terrible thing, the left are doing it, they are the people who 50 years ago would have been going out of their way to silence somebody for swearing, for being too provocative. You know, they're the ones who will sit there and shame women for daring to have autonomy over their bodies, for, you know, this idea that, you know, gay people exist, that people exist outside of the gender binary, because that's just a social construct in and of itself. They're the people who would have been behind silencing all of those. Exactly. They would have been behind all of those actions, which was an active example of what they consider cancel culture. They would not have had a chance. They would not have been given a chance. It's why we've had to fight so hard, why those groups have had to fight so hard, you know. And those people, they just, again, I'm really having a hard time trying to understand the need to be the victim, because it's always well, they're doing it to us even though we've always done it to everybody else. It's like, well, no, we're not actually doing it to you guys. You guys just don't understand the problems that you're creating and why people no longer want to deal with you. You also don't seem to understand how market forces work, because you're no longer desirable in the marketplace. Therefore, the marketplace is no longer going to let you profit off of it. because you suck. Capitalism is great until it works against you.
Destroyed by their own free market. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think those are valid points, saying essentially what you're telling me is that they did cancel people. Look at what they did in the 60s. They canceled black people, right? You can't come in this restaurant. We're going to do this. And, we got police. So, so they used cancel culture in a more authoritarian way. But I want to go through this real quick. We're going to go through these articles. I don't care. Because there's some really good stuff in here that we could talk about. So last year in the Republican convention, there was a lot about cancel culture because Trump does not like that. And I hate bringing him into this, but he is one of the epitomes of promoting cancel culture as the evil of everything, right?
Yeah.
Because who did he make fun of?
Hillary.
Well, yeah. And Ted Cruz and the guy on CNN and the guy on
reporter
Fox, and the reporter and every one of his opponents and Joe Biden and oh my God, the list could go on. We could literally spend an hour going through everything he made fun of, right?
Or all the Republicans who capitulated and now are licking his boots.
Yeah. So the discussion is it turns from cancel culture to free speech. What is free speech? Is it something that, we should be looking at? And what is, oops, didn't mean to click that. And what is, what is it? What is everything actually? Because we have to have that conversation as intelligent individuals, right? We need to. And here's the idea. This gentleman, there's this article written about why it's not actually about free speech for a lot of people, right? And Wines and Sullivan are frequent critics of the modern left's position on identity issues. Hence, that's the letters I clicked on, right? These are people that have left the New York Times specifically over the fact of they believe cancel culture is what's in there. They believe a critical mass of staff and management at the magazine no longer wanted to associate with them. They seem to believe, and this is increasingly the orthodox and mainstream media, that any writer not actively committed to critical theory and question of race, gender, sexual orientation is actively physically harming coworkers in the virtual space. Now, we all know that's not true. Like that's really not true.
As soon as I hear someone say the mainstream media is attacking one group of people, it sends my skeptical flags up immediately, because those are the things that say that the media is like this huge, uniform, centralized thing that everyone's kind of agreeing with.
Yes. And that's essentially what this is claiming. This is saying, and we could really go down a rabbit hole, because we could discuss morality here, and we could actually discuss why I'm an objective moralist and not a subjective moralist. Like, we could go down that rabbit hole, like, you won't believe, my friend, But essentially, the discussion is not about cancel culture. It's not about freedom of speech. It's about what the boundaries should or should not be. Where the boundaries
should there be
should
any
drawn at. Is there any that should ever be given, right? And you want to use Disney. Let's use Disney as an example. They fired James Gunn for I don't know if it was a tweet or a comedy routine he did where he basically joked about pedophilia. Now, he did that before he worked for Disney. When that came out, he was fired from Disney. So Disney, in fairness, is not actually going that far out of the norm for things they've done in the past, right? Now, we could argue about whether firing a guy about an old comedy routine is something we want to do, especially if he's going to apologize, if he's going to, say, hey, I was wrong. We know
we did it to Al Franken.
Do that.
Well, they did it to Al Franken.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, sometimes, you know, there's varying degrees of it, and in this day and age, we have, you know, a bunch of people that are demanding absolutes. If you do anything outside, like, you can be essentially just, you're persona non grata. And so, like, that's a difficult thing to deal with too, because I don't deal well with absolutes, because everything is gray and nasty. And so, like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of layers that get into this, but like that James Gunn thing, that definitely was like, you know, it's like there are some really great old jokes that are kind of gross. Old comedians that are
okay, fine, and I'm gonna pass that because I agree with you. There's things that I've listened to as a kid that, like, I'll give you an example. Dennis Leary. You know who I don't find fun anymore? Dennis Leary.
I know. I don't.
I found him hilarious as a 16-year-old. Not no more.
Yeah.
The guy runs around screaming about smoking and all of this stuff. He's the
old Louis C.K. bits and everything. I mean, it's just like his comedy is funny, but then you look at like what he is, and you're just like, ugh. And then Cosby, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like, separate the performer from the artist, the performance from the artist.
So there's a fair critique in this to some extent, right? Advocates have overreached. That's not something that has not happened, and we should be criticizing them. But if you take work as a whole, if you take the whole of the pie, we are not aiming at restricting freedom, but expanding it, because we are saying marginalized voices should feel more comfortable in a public space than you being able to make your shit joke. And Twitter is a public space. That's a fact, right? And Twitter, you know, and this is why people are up in arms, because Twitter canceled Trump. Twitter canceled, who else did they cancel? Giuliani. They canceled certain people from their platform. Now, in one world...
Just like they refused to bake a cake.
Exactly. Thank you. You stole that right out of my mouth. But exactly, that's... Now my computer fell. But that's exactly what it is. Is you say, my religion says I don't believe in gay marriage. I'm not going to bake you a fucking cake. Sue me, and I'll win. And boom, look what happened. Twitter goes... Fuck you, Trump. We've told you to stop spreading your lies.
We don't want to bake your cake.
Yeah.
We don't want to bake your orange cake. It's not that hard to understand.
We can talk about that because, and again, this is where the discussion of the cult movement comes in, right? This is a cult movement. That's what people are trying to claim cancel culture is, the woke left. And I'll tell you what, when I hear you say the woke left, I don't give a fuck about you no more. You are closed-minded and have no interest in actually dialoguing with me. Because I'll tell you, we could debate James Gunn being fired from Star Wars. I'll debate whether Gina should have been canceled from Star Wars. 100%. I'll debate that. I'll have that conversation with you. What I won't have is a conversation of, well, it's cancel culture. No, fuck you. It's not fucking cancel culture. When Disney preemptively did this, there was no cancel Gina hashtag that actually made this happen. And I'll tell you, my wife and I have argued about this more than one time, because if I find out somebody went to a Nazi rally, I'm all for them losing their job unless they apologize. I'm all for outing those people, right? We should have social programs that help take care of people like that. That if you can't get your public view that's shitty out of my space, out of the fucking public space, then guess what? Maybe you should just live on disability and fucking sit in your home and shoot your fucking guns and claim how much you hate black people all day long. I don't care. You can't burn a cross because you'll burn the fucking neighborhood down because you're probably too fucking stupid to know how to do it anymore. But it's not cancel culture if a company does it to you without us calling for it. Period. It's not. They made the decision. Let them do it. And that's the same thing. Again,
they're saying the company is part of it now.
Yeah.
It's just the corporate media, the mainstream media. They're all part of the leftist agenda. So, like, the one thing that like, I know
Ben
that.
Shapiro
I know that.
stay around. Ben Shapiro's still here. And
the
entertaining.
real leftists hate these billion-dollar-a-year corporations that step all over. And they exploit labor and they're basically mixing corporate leftists, but they're not even corporate leftists. They're mixing corporate centrists and corporate political agendas with far left or at least left agendas, which are completely and totally different. But that's another thing that happens. It's hard to understand those differentiations, and if you're from a particular group that is relatively uneducated about the nuances when it comes to the different kinds of economic philosophy, because we all know trickle down doesn't trickle anywhere but into your lunch in the afternoon. But one of
trickles
the
down their pants because you can only shake and wiggle so many times when you're done.
And one of the things that I find is interesting is that we talked about the few cases where there was like an overreach or whatever. It felt like, this is a little too much. They're overreaching. Well, you know what? We heard the same thing about the Me Too thing, right? There were a couple cases where a couple of guys got overreached and they kind of sort of got. But you know what? The majority of those cases were actually dudes being horrible people, and it was good that they got smushed by the machine. We can look at any other example of cases where what's that, false rape accusations? Yeah, there's been a couple that were false, but you know what, the majority of them are true, accurate, and completely and totally should be way more given credit than they are. But a couple of people in Hollywood got overreached, but you know what, the majority didn't. So we're gonna play a numbers game here. And we're gonna lean on the side of the majority, and we're gonna say that most of these cases are cases that are legitimate, and the few that are, we'll work on it and we'll try to make sure that it's legit. But in the end, playing that number game, it's not something that I'm uncomfortable with.
And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, talking about my movement away from conservatism, was this whole what about false rape accusations. It's like, okay, let's look at the numbers. What is it? 90% of sexual assault cases, 90% of sexual assault cases go unreported, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so that means we only know about 10%. And how many of those percent were false accusations?
So close to zero, could be considered zero.
So you're basically looking at a number that is less than 1% of the overall number of accounts. And the people sitting there harping on, well, we got to watch out for that. It's like, no, we don't, because we have sat there and acted like that is the priority for so long that 90% of the people who suffer these atrocious crimes and violations on their autonomy are silenced. They don't feel any reason to say anything, because you sit there and you care more about the possibility that you might say something to a woman and then you get written up for sexual harassment. If that's your concern, shut the fuck up and go home. Just go home. Go for socialism so you can live on UBI and just be a hermit and shut up and live under a rock, because that is where scum like you belong. Is right there, because you are not conducive to any sort of social progress. All you want is the status quo. It's something really drove me nuts, because I saw Tony Robbins was trending several years back when Me Too first started taking wind.
Tony Robbins
really catching the sale. I don't know, when Me Too first started taking off. Tony Robbins was sitting there and he was saying, women, basically trying to say that women shouldn't use that as a way to try to get ahead. And it's like, you sick son of a bitch. Is that really the message you want the women who come to your seminars and pay you boatloads of money to take away from it? Because they'll never give you those boatloads of money again. And I mean, I know that that's really just a pittance compared to what you make off of all of your investments and the boards you're on and the big billionaire clients who pay you, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to sit there and suck them off, essentially. But at the end of the day, like, those are still people who are reading your books and taking in your message, and they're internalizing that message, that their pain, that what they go through, what they have to suffer, is less important because some rich white guy is uncomfortable that he can't slap a woman's ass without permission. Like, what is it with this shit? Like, well, I have to change, and that's the problem. Like,
no, and I think that's what goes in. That's what we're talking about. This has been around for more than
a
long time. People have shamed child molesters. People are shamed. I didn't know this, but you know what a crush video is? We're not going to Google it, and we're not going to play it. But a crush video is a animal cruelty video that people jack off to, I guess, which is weird.
Serial killers
Honestly,
kill
what?
people. Serial killers kill animals. Stepping stones for sociopathic behavior. You can imagine what we're looking at.
Like, that's the type of behavior we should be looking to root out and trying to get rid of, because that's what's creating half of the problems and is creating this idea that we shouldn't care. Is
Rule
because
34 is a dangerous, nasty place. So, yes.
What?
But we've been doing this for a long time.
Yes. And that's the idea, is that other places in the world, and that was my question, is, are we the only cancel culture place in the world? Or is other nations experiencing things that we have, right? And we'll take that, what we just talked about, and people are going after these offenders. They're outing them on the community. They're taking them and saying, look here, folks, look at this. And there's a whole essay dedicated to this type of thing. But guess what? In America, we call that cancel culture. And this is why I say cancel culture doesn't exist. Will I say that some people practice poorly designated, aggressive campaigns against people that don't deserve it? Like you said earlier, Hannah, the answer is yes, that does happen. Is it currently happening all the time because you don't want somebody to expose you for yelling at a migrant family that worked on your farm? Oh, which happened this year in Michigan, because some guy got pissed off at somebody who didn't speak his same language, who they're paying pennies on the dollar to labor for them in the apple field, And like Robinettes, kind of the similar type thing. They were exposed for another reason similar to that. People started calling them out. Everybody goes, this is cancel culture. Why are you doing this? Well, when you allow the Trump family to come here and then you endorse them, you're essentially endorsing what they stand for, not because they're Republican, but because of who they are. And there's a whole, that's the difference in these type of things. And this thing, this whole
that
article,
used to happen, and people used to be cool with it. You know what I mean?
Now
now we've seen like a growth in those voices and those messages. They found a place on the internet. They found a place in culture. Recently, they had a bullhorn who was one of the most powerful people in the entire world, just espousing the things that they said. And now we're trying to put that rabbit back inside the bag, right? We're trying to put that close Pandora's box. And in doing that, we're going to start shutting down views and positions that society itself deems unnecessary, unwanted. And we started by putting a new president in power, and we're going to continue that by collectively deciding that some things are gross and some things aren't. This is a majority type situation. We do need to protect the voices of the minority, but these voices that are talking about these things here, like the fact that society is saying, we don't really like what you're doing. It isn't like this monoculture, this universal hive mind that's specifically attacking these groups of people. That's the thing. Like, they hear society saying, no, we don't like you, and they automatically think that we're all this one collective. The reason that I don't like something may be completely different than the reason that you don't like it, but we both disagree with it, and we both think it should not be around anymore. And that isn't us working together to like conspiracy attack a crazy lady in a crazy lady in the house.
Yep. And so I'll leave you with this as we move on. I really want to go into our science segment because I'm very excited about Mars and Mars life. And I know Hannah's going to want 10 minutes at minimum to have uninterrupted monologue because that's how he is. So I got to make sure we end this so he gets his time. But I will leave you with this. We're not going to go through this. Everything we've talked about is in this NPR article. It's a 7-minute listen. And this is my challenge, and I'll be tagging you if you were on my Facebook page this week for this video. I'm going to tag you and say, hey, listen to our show. This is the cancel culture part. And then listen to this article. This is the article. Listen to this. And if you want to come on the show, let me know. I'll open up a second cancel culture dialogue in a week or two where we can have a conservative on, or 2 or 3, to have this conversation. Here's the problem. Y'all talk shit on Facebook, but you don't actually want to have a conversation in a controlled environment with us. And so my thing is bring it on. I'll happily debate every one of these points in here. And you can send me all your links ahead of time if that's what you want. You know, I'm all for it. But I don't want. If we keep going down this, we could spend another hour. I have another hour worth of articles that we haven't even gotten.
He's not
to
kidding.
yet. And it's just because this pissed me off this week so much. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, and then we just lost Hanna as we get ready to go into his segment.
Oh no! Did we lose Hanna?
We did. I think his internet just pooped on him.
All right. Well, that's what happens when you get snow in Ohio and you're not used to it, right?
Apparently. All right. Well,
we'll go ahead and kick this off. I have his note. I'm excited. I like Mars. I will apologize if Hanna never joins us and we don't do the service that he would do to it. But
that's okay. We'll do what we can.
This is great. So I actually follow this website quite a bit, and we don't bring it up on the show as much, but I find the Mars endeavor very fun, very entertaining, and as much as I can't stand Elon Musk, if there was a way, if there was any way that I could go live on Mars and I was guaranteed not to have demons get summoned like in Doom, I probably would go live on Mars because that would be amazing.
Well, I do think that there's a very, very good chance of that because I think demons are not a thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hanna, why don't you? We'll give you some time to stare at the camera because that's what he's doing. All right. Anyway, we're gonna move on. So, essentially, a lot of the discussion about this, right, is all the different people that have tried to get onto Mars, what they've done. We've had the rover, right? Now this one called Tianwen.
Tianwen.
There you go.
Tianwen.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I don't try to pronounce them. I don't know. Just like, have you ever had a Korean food called bulgogi?
I have.
It's amazing, and it's like one of those things where I never knew how to say it ever, and then finally, because of Lunar New Year this year, there's this TikTok chef I follow, and he gave us a recipe, and he's like, "Oh, we do this," and then I was like, "Oh, well, what about this, this, and this?" I started going through his TikTok, and I was like, "Oh, that's how you say that, bulgogi." I didn't know that's how you say it. You know, I probably slaughtered that 17 different ways to Mars, you know.
I wish I could have heard all of those ways, because that's amazing.
No, we're not going to. And moving on. But this, how did you say it again?
Bulgogi?
No. The name of the Mars rover.
Tianwen.
Tianwen. Which I guess means questioning the heavens, which I find even more amazing. Like, they're actually... it's actually extremely amazing that they call this questioning heaven, because we all question heaven all the same, right? You know, ourselves. And here we are talking about a rover that was on Mars service that is questioning whether there's anything beyond it. So do you know anything at all about China's attempt and what they're doing at all?
China? No. But I know that they've got a very bigly approach to it. And they've got a lot of respect for what we're doing here. And I know that they're going to want to use our technology and our infrastructure. No. Oh, sorry. That hurt to do that. I hurt my brain doing that.
Remember, we're trying to be...
Unfortunately, I don't. I knew they were doing something, but I had not really looked too much into it. So this is kind of like exciting news for me.
Yep.
Yay, he's back.
He's back. So
yeah,
you know, but for me, what is exciting is that they launched this during COVID, right? So they don't care what Americans say, I guess, you know, about them. They launched this, and what's amazing about this is they're looking for ways to survive on Mars. What? You know, I'm sorry, not what, but right? You know, like that's what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to say, hey, we're going to use all these different tools in our pocket, and we want to launch something that can look for evidence of water on Mars. Because
well, they're cheating too. They're skipping a whole bunch of steps. They're doing an orbiter, which is going to stay around Mars, and they also are going to try to land something on Mars. Nobody's ever done that on their first try. So they're going big. So this has potentiality to be just a giant pile of scrap metal.
Yeah, and we were actually talking about, you know, the name of it, questions to heaven, or questioning the heavens, which is just amazing. Like, that should have been
why would China choose questioning anything, really? They don't like that at all.
So I'll tell you what. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna rewind a little bit, and Hannah, if you want to go ahead and give like kind of an intro of where you want to go with this, why this excites you, and then we'll bring you everybody back in a second.
Well, everybody's probably been hearing a little bit about how the fact that there's all these Mars missions that are kind of working their way towards a collective arrival. There's three particular cases that are inbound, like they are going to be landing very soon. The one that you guys talked about, the Tianwen, and then also the United Arab Emirates Hope, which is going to be just an orbiter, but it's going to be doing a whole bunch of different things. And then the United States has been working on the Perseverance, which is the newest nuclear powered rover. And so like all of these things are all kind of just happening all at once, and all of these things supersede, or at least have been happening throughout the entire Trump turmoil and all of this chaos and pandemic garbage that's been going on in the last few years. It's like this is stuff that was started years and years ago. Billions, I mean, just piles of money have been put together here in the collective and human advancement of science into what the Martians are, the little green men that we might find would potentially look like. And so the Chinese are going to be doing an orbiter around Mars, which is cool because like we all love really high end pictures. If you see the image that we used for the show tonight, and the banner on Facebook, those are super high resolution images of some of the like Grand Canyons on Mars, which is some of the biggest in our solar system, including the Martian volcano, which is the biggest in our solar system. If you look at the comparisons to Earth mountains versus the Martian massive mountain, it's so cool how big it is that it just completely would overshoot our atmosphere. It's just awesome. But like all of those kinds of things are visible from the orbital realm. So like the orbiters are going to be going around the planet of Mars, looking at stuff that we couldn't see in super high def, and they're going to be sending things back and forth, and then also just crawling around on the surface, which is also a massive deal. So like we have all of this really great science coming from what some people in history in the future may call the short dark ages of the United States. Like that may be a thing that we think of when it comes to like just like a complete eradication of general scientific integrity. And then we'll see this like these scientific landings on another planet. And we'll see some really good growth. Like it's just good, happy news. The United Arab Emirates, like places we don't particularly think of anything besides football and soccer. Like we're seeing like some massive, scientific endeavors with these people that are really trying to make something awesome happen. And the Chinese, like as much as everybody wants to make it a competitive nature, competition is actually kind of good. And the Chinese going to Mars, maybe that's going to push the United States to give a little bit more of a shit about on our science and our space exploration and whatever. So like the capitalists should love this, right? The Americans are going to beat the Chinese just like we beat the Russians to the moon, blah blah blah. Either way, we get new things like GPS and new technology. So like this whole thing, getting to Mars and all this cool stuff, this is the reason it interests me, because the technology that's being developed to do the things that they want to do on Mars is going to be the new technology that will eventually come to us when we're 50, 60, 70 years old. That'll finally trickle down to the average person on Earth, or maybe on, living on different planets or different moons or something. Who knows what's coming in our future? But the technology they're working on right now will basically create the scientific foundation to any kind of technology that allows us to live off world. And it's just absolutely astounding. So like the Chinese one we talked about just for a short moment. That's they're going to be sending an orbiter and a lander, and they were on the moon last year. So like they're really jumping in everything all at once, and they're going to be dealing with their first time dealing with the 7 minutes of terror, which is essentially everything is autonomous. So the NASA has dealt with this for years. It's anything that goes to Mars. Once you begin your descent onto the planet, there's about 7 minutes of descent, and all of your decision making is all AI and autonomous. Because it takes too long for information to come back. I think it's like 15 minutes for radio communication to go back from Mars to Earth. So while it's landing, it's completely and totally on its own. I hope your programmers were good, and I hope they weren't hung over the day they were. Seriously, I hope they weren't hung over that one day that we had that one thing. And dude, so like everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect.
Those people don't do that, man.
Yeah.
Nah, not really. And do you remember that guy we used to have on? What was his name? Dan Bachelor.
Dan Bachelor.
I mean, I'll tell you what, he liked his scotch, but there was definitely no times he got wasted and then went to.
Yeah. So anyway, so like basically the Chinese are going to be dealing with that 7 minutes of terror for the first time. And that's, I mean, the Russians did it in Venus. It completely was destroyed. I want to think there's a couple of orbiters that didn't survive, and there's a couple of landers that didn't survive coming into Mars, and I'm not 100% certain exactly what their names were. I do vaguely remember there were some failures, but and then so the one that you have up now with the one you had was the UAE's Hope, and that one's essentially building on a super high orbiter that's going to be doing a bunch of different things that the original orbiters that were only about 4,500 by 150 kilometers or so, like these new ones are going to be 22,000 by 44,000 kilometers. So like it's just going to be further out. So from this high perch, it's going to be studying the upper atmosphere and looking for specific things like hydrogen and oxygen and stuff. So like trying to essentially find where water was and just take super high resolution images. And then this is just, I mean, the United Arab Emirates. This is just another group of people. And all of these groups and all of these countries kind of sort of work together when it comes to these launches and kind of this technology, which is really cool. And so like it's just one of those things, like we talk about, the UN and like a global, some kind of new world order. Maybe science could be the thing that kind of brings us together, because we're definitely not going to get along when it comes to our religious views, and our political views are going to be so scattershot. Science offers like a foundation that's going to be. Calculus is the same in the Arab world as it is in downtown Chicago. You know what I mean? Like those are kinds of things that we can. Physics doesn't change depending on what country you're in, and that the idea that Carl Sagan used to put forth, those kinds of things, like the universe is a large thing and it doesn't really care that much about the pale blue dot. And that everything is consistent. So like maybe science could be the thing that we can all work together with and build on that foundation. So like UAE doing this with the Hope orbiter is super cool, and then Perseverance. When that thing comes through, that's going to be happening on Thursday, which is awesome. So like, as far as I know, Thursday is the expected date. I don't know if there's any kinds of changes where they can change the trajectory and land, a day or two later if the Martian weather isn't particularly good. But like Perseverance essentially is just like the Curiosity rover. It's nuclear powered, so which will allow it to overcome like the massive dust storms and things that'll be happening on Mars' surface that'll essentially keep it moving. So one of the reasons why some of the older orbiters or the older rovers stopped working on Mars' surface was they became lodged and stuck in place, and then a dust storm hit and batteries died, and they weren't able to charge the system anymore. And either since it was a dust storm, they couldn't have the solar panels open to absorb sunlight. So when the dust storm was over, everything was closed. It couldn't open itself. And so like there's nuclear power and stuff for the new Perseverance rover, and That one is going to be happening on Thursday. What that's going to be doing, they've been talking about it, is that it's going to be drilling a bunch of holes and using a whole bunch of new technology that it has. And what they're hoping that it'll be able to do essentially is just like create these little tubes on the surface. So like rock material, and they'll store it in these special tubes. And so like it'll be using its spectrometers and a whole bunch of life scanning tools on board, but it'll also be leaving all these little pods, these little containers all over the surface. And those little containers, when they're in the future, the plan is that they're going to send a rover to Mars that'll be like a collection rover. It'll collect all of the little containers that have been dropped all over by Perseverance, and it will bring those back to some kind of a lander, and there'll be a rocket system built into that lander, and it will launch it into space. So Perseverance is doing like the initial ground legwork to like create cores and sample cores. And then they want to put these things, and there's an image further down in the document that shows it. They want to put the meat from the surface of Mars, all the rocks. So in our actual document, the Google Doc, and it's an image that shows essentially the next step, which this little thing will be collecting stuff, and it'll basically put that into a rocket of some kind, and it'll launch it right into orbit is the plan. So in that picture there, so you see like a rover dropping stuff, and there's a little rover that's going to pick up stuff, and then it's going to pick the containers up. It's going to shoot those little containers in some kind of an encapsulated rocket of some kind up into space, where there's an orbiter that will collect via various ways of collecting this, and there will be a little disc pod that'll be sent back to Earth. And so like we are decades, probably I would say maybe 10 years out from seeing like fruits of the labors that Perseverance is going to be doing. Like this is long-term stuff. This is beyond progressive agendas and conservative agendas. This is science is the long game, and there's all of this stuff is kind of accumulating and all happening within a very short period of time, and it's really fun to watch. It's really interesting to see how all of this new technology is going to be, they're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to see it. And it's up to you and me and your friends and your family to share that information, post about it, and make it a big deal. Make people see like, wow, we're on Mars. We're doing interesting things. Because if you share nothing but doom scrolling, that's what people are going to see. But if you share the new technology, the new science, and the new stuff that happens, you might get a little bit of that itch you felt when you were a young kid, or maybe even the same thing you felt in Interstellar when the Earth was going to be destroyed and everyone was going to die, and like two people had to save all humans. I don't know. Depends on what level of doom scrolling you want to run in, but like there's so much cool stuff that's out there. If you can get past what some of the some of the media funnels are giving you, you can find some really cool science and some really cool stories to follow, and maybe that can be a little bit more of an important part of your life instead of some of this depressing stuff that we do talk a little too much about. But I still hope one day to go to space in some way. Virgin mega stores, the Virgin CD factory airplane to shoot into space, or if it came to it, some kind of weird Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk airplane where you get to fly into space. I don't know.
You just gotta hope, Hanna, that they don't have a demon outbreak. That's all I'm saying. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I've been playing a lot of Doom 3. Because it was on the PS5 for $2.99, so I've been crushing that game. But I'm telling you what, man, it's some scary shit with those demons.
I vaguely remember hearing religious people say that this new technology will unleash the tools of the devil, and we will all be consumed by science. But it never happened. So
Tanner,
okay.
What you're saying is that Mars might be a demon-haunted world.
Yeah. Have you never played Doom? Do you not know the story behind Doom?
Thank you for getting what I said, Hanna. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those Carl Sagan moments.
I made a Sagan.
Okay, whatever. Way to ruin a good fucking metal video game and try to make it about.
Well, you're not ruining it. Carl Sagan's
outdated
Demon Hunter
and
World
blah, blah,
and
blah.
Doom Eternal can coexist in the world, and they're both amazing.
Yes.
Doom Eternal and all Dooms are better than Carl Sagan, hands down. Anyway, that's a hill I'll fucking die on. How about that? Maybe that's an after show thing. I don't know.
Ooh.
We could debate that. I like to debate, so you should know me by now. Maybe some eggs too. All right. So the last segment I wanted to talk about, and I don't know what the hell's wrong with this light. I need a new camera, I think.
You're reverse exposed, man. You got a profile. You're like the profile they used to give you on MySpace before Tom was your friend.
When Tom was your only friend. Tom the friend. So this goes a little bit more into business-ish type discussion. And I do this because I had a this came up actually as a topic of discussion at our company last week. And the reason it came up is because of the fact that we are working towards trying to integrate all of our warehouse clients into e-commerce and all of that fancy stuff. So our goal is to essentially be able to make a bunch of money, off of clients that want to move away from box store, that type of thing, to e-commerce. And so Procter and Gamble have a growing wave of e-commerce sales that they're kind of toting, right? They made $5 billion in e-commerce sales by the end of December. They said it's a 14% figure of their corporation. That's crazy, right? And so think of it this way. So if you don't know what e-commerce is, it's like your Amazons. It's all these places that are taking over you physically having to go into the grocery store. And I say this because during the pandemic, right? This is kind of an amazing type thing, right? We had a discussion, where we all were worried. I guess I don't have a light anymore. My light officially
I didn't know what's going on.
Oh, here it comes.
Hey, there you are.
It's the demon.
Ghost confirmed. We are now a ghost podcast. We have to talk about the Sasquatch.
Oh, well, I have my beard.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, Procter & Gamble is making tons and tons of e-commerce money, and I'm guessing it's not going to trickle down to you or me.
No, but that's not the point of this discussion, though, right? I get your point. I don't disagree with you. That's a whole different discussion we can have. And if you want to help me do the research next week, we could have that conversation. This week, though, the idea is if e-commerce sales are becoming more prominent, right? What does that do to the economy, right? And this article actually has no conversation about that. But it's sparked.
I've never heard anybody really talk about it that much. And in reality, the changes that it changes the infrastructure, what does that do to the economy?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. For the last segment of the show, that's what I want to talk about. Because I find this very interesting because of the unexpected sales growth that they are experiencing. And they're not the only ones. And I'll give you an example. There's a furniture company in Michigan that essentially used to have a store. They used to sell to businesses where people would sit, at your office. Guess where people worked who worked in offices, in Michigan at least, but a lot of the country, where do they work? At home. We actually took on some of their business of shipping chairs and desks for them to people at home. For example, you just saw my lights go out because I stood up and I have a bad connection in the wire to that lamp, but I need to get rid of that lamp. I'm gonna electrocute my ass one of these. But anyway,
we'll finally get a viral video is when Tanner dies on camera.
Yeah. It won't be that bad.
Nicolas Cage will come on and he'll yell on screen.
I only got 80 amp service. It's not that bad. But the idea though is, right, folks, the thing I want to talk about is because they're shipping it. Right. So what is it doing? So that it's you're reducing space in these big box retail stores. You're reducing space in offices. That means less power consumption, less need to have new structures created to house fucking people that could work at other house.
Heat buildings and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But on the opposite side is creating more money in transportation. And if you didn't know, what I do for a living is work with companies that are now shipping more via FedEx, UPS, and all these other things to say, hey, if you consolidated ship to a main central hub and put them on local vehicles, it would actually save you X amount of dollars. But let's not get into what Chris does for a living. It's not really that interesting.
Well, this Chris kind of works on the engines that are inside of all those things, moving all that stuff.
Yeah, and so you got
in business isn't bad. All those trucks are driving around.
Yeah, because they're using more packaging. They're doing all these other things that would normally. What do you and I do? We recycle. At least I do. I don't know if you all recycle, but I recycle. And, it's irritating. I filled my recycle bin in 1 week, but I can't get them to come pick the shit up. They told me they'll pick it up and dump it in the garbage, but it doesn't help me.
They just finally started doing recycling in Ohio, at least where I live, and they pick it up. They changed it. They do it each week now. It's like this weird green thing. Which is good
cool. Because you want to know what pisses me off? I pay more money for my trash service that I don't need. Like, I literally am paying $55 for trash every 3 months, but I never fill my trash bin. My mother-in-law canceled her trash service just to fill my bin. I'm dead serious because, like, she has 2 trash bags when she comes down, and that's usually once every 2 to 3 weeks. I have 2 trash bags a week, maybe a little bit more. If I composted, which I don't honestly do, but if I did compost, it'd be even more, or even less. Sorry, trash bags. And like in Grand Rapids, you could pay for a trash bag per service. You could just go, I buy 1 bag a week. There you go.
And then the raccoons will tear your bag out and spread it all over your front yard.
all right. That's fair. Yeah. That's a fair thing. But you know what I'm trying to say is, like, we're paying more money for our garbage, and if they're using it to sustain the green side of it, whatever, fuck it, I don't care. I paid $12 for recycling for 3 months that they pick up every other thing. It doesn't cost them as much, and they got to make money somewhere. And I'm not going to sit here and argue about the capitalist intent of all of this other things. What I am going to say is, what does the studies say, or what is happening with e-commerce compared to the environment? And A, is this better? And B, does it become sustainable? So what are your all thoughts on Keith?
So I do work in e-commerce. I actually work with a company that is a payment facilitator for a lot of online merchants. And honestly, just in the increase of volume that we saw alone in 2 days within the lockdowns all going on, yeah, that is kind of the best place to start looking into opening business is online. It's going to be a lot more reliable. I mean, I think it is going to put more strain on internet providers, but at the end of the day, like they can handle it. I'm pretty sure, given that technology is rapidly improving as fast as it is.
We're talking about American infrastructure in the years. It's pretty bad.
let's not talk about the infrastructure. I'm talking technology. Technology and infrastructure, they're not interwoven. I mean, you know how it goes. Like,
yeah, I got dumped a little while ago on the internet here.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, sorry. What was the full question again? Because I think I may have deviated a little bit.
You did a little bit. I just
e-commerce
asked,
money.
What was your opinion on e-commerce? Is it going to help the environment, or does it harm it?
Ew.
And can it become sustainable?
Yeah, that's. I mean, because it will require the use of energy constantly. Now, I don't know specifically the numbers on that, so I'm really hedging myself. I think it will probably be better for the environment in the long term because it will involve less, using physical resources for such things, for money, like to generate physical money, on that, at least on that particular avenue. But
it's a tough one.
It's incredibly
it's
tough
just
to,
your
to
opinion,
know.
man. Just give an
My
opinion.
opinion,
I'm not gonna
it's
pick you
my
apart.
opinion. My opinion, it's going to be better in the long run. Maybe not so much right now, because as Hannah was kind enough to point out, the infrastructure kind of sucks and isn't the most reliable. But I think as we go forward, it will gradually improve out of necessity, simply for the fact that when the bigwigs might stand to lose a little bit more money if things go sideways, they might want to do more to protect, so they'll invest more in improving said infrastructure. Probably not a lot, but enough that they're at least protected. So I think that might be the closest thing to trickle down that we might see in terms of benefits from billionaires.
Well, we know for certain that like GM has committed to an all electric fleet, and I'm trying to think of another company that just was it Ford? No, Jaguar. According to the fine fellows at Top Gear, that essentially there are a bunch of major automotive manufacturers that are committing to electric. So what does that have any kind of connection to e-commerce and the environmental impact? Well, if all of the vehicles that are going to be moving around are going to be electric, we're going to start seeing massive increases in the green capability of transit vehicles themselves. And so it's already happening inside hubs. There are electric vehicles and electric things moving things around all of these warehouses, because massive warehouses, stupid huge numbers of inventory, and the difficulty therein for moving things around. And Chris can obviously vouch for that a lot of these big companies are using that new technology. So extend that new technology to green cars, to electric vehicles, to electric little sprinter vans that are moving around. all of these kinds of technologies are going to be, they're coming. It's not so much a if, it's a when. And so e-commerce essentially removing the one person in a 2,000 to 2,500 pound car to a 4,000 pound pickup truck driving through suburbia into a shopping district, removing that trip, that incredibly carbon rich trip, and replacing it with a variety of electronic transactions as far as vehicles and things. There could be some net benefit to that overall structure. The biggest issue is that the way that's currently being organized is that there's only a couple of people who are in charge of it. And so the economic, the e-commerce version of like whether or not it's a healthy economic model, because it's almost devolving into a monopolistic tendency. Like if only a few companies are in charge of the entire thing, they'll be able to basically make the decisions of whether or not this is a green enough thing, or will it be kind of like a competitive nature of what we were talking about. It's like competition is good. We're all competing to go to X place in the solar system. It'd be really cool if we were competing to be the most green and the most efficient company in the United States, and then extending that out to the rest of the world. We don't quite see that as much, and so it's more we're competing to be the most profitable. But the most profitable doesn't always directly associate with the most green or most energy efficient and environmentally economical. And so like I I think it's going to be more so a benefit, because we're less, individual cars and transportation. Maybe we'll start seeing things like buses and stuff like that as like a more like community driven transportation system. But like I do think that overall, like this e-commerce stuff and removing people from buildings, it'll be a net negative on jobs. It'll be a net positive on the environmental end of things, because there'll just be less general carbon consumption, at least with the current structure. So like I think it'd be a little bit more positive. I think the industrial end of things is way more positive because I know that the cities that they've shut down because of the pandemic and stuff, they saw huge growth in the quality of the air and all that kind of stuff. So like I'm curious to see how that bleeds in and how all of this e-commerce growth is tied to that, or if it's just pandemic shutdown green growth or whatever on that end.
And that's fair. And I think that's so if we actually look at the article, they actually do have an environmental impact that happened last year, right? And it's done by research and marketing, which you have to pay for if you want to read it. But essentially they talk about the carbon footprint of traditional in-store shopping, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
that's
pretty
the
big.
discussion. That's the big thing, is reducing that footprint. And can we, right? Because here now you're talking about statistics, right? We already built the buildings. We've already expended that energy. Are we actually able to reduce that carbon footprint? Because now we're only doing the carbon footprint of people being there and operating it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
yeah, the carbon sink of concrete is vast and deep.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yes, and so this does not cover that specifically. They talk about the billions and trillions of dollars being spent. They talk about where it's being spent, the global share. They talk about delivery opportunities, packaging, which is a big one. This is the biggest deterrent right here. Sustainable payments, which I don't actually care about because I think it's
because
bullshit
PayPal. Thanks, Elon.
Yeah, how we live life. Travel and the companies offering these different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they do. They have specifically. They have all of that information in that report.
So what are their conclusions?
Yep, this is another study where they actually analyze that report and then they compare it to Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. Now think about this, and I'm going to pose this a minute before we talk about the next thing, right? I ordered a stand-up desk, and normally if you work in an office, the bulk is delivered, right? The company orders 40 to 500 of these things, right? Depending on how many employees you have.
Sure.
So in our offices, it was, 75. I ordered one individually. My shipping was free because of Amazon. I paid $275 for a stand-up desk that is right here, 55-inch.
Quick question.
Nothing.
How long did it take to get there?
Under a week.
Okay, so it's not the 2 days stuff anymore. Okay.
This one was not because this one specifically was not because it was not kept in a warehouse. But it's essentially an off-brand, I don't have like an on-brand one. I bought an off-brand one because it was cheaper. It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Was it an Amazon Prime Prime Choice thing?
It was it wasn't a Prime Choice, but it was definitely a Prime.
Yeah. So shipping was
vendor.
Free.
Yeah. So shipping was free, but the damn thing cost or weighed at least 60 pounds because of the legs. So like when the guy came, I got a knock on the door, and I was like, "Hey," he's like, "I'm not gonna lift this package by myself. Will you please help me lift it?" And I was like, "Well, sure, but you're gonna bring it to my back porch then instead of my front porch." And he's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like not to be a dick, but I don't need to help you carry it up the stairs to my front porch to not be able to get it into my house. Like I could drag it, I guess, all the way through the house, but we might as well just take it right around the back." And he helped me till he got to the stairs. It's like, "I'm not entering your house. Thanks. Have a nice day," which is fine. That was fine. I got my kid to help me from there. And the same one,
but still, there's weight limits on shipping and that kind of stuff.
There is. So they have 2 people loaded because it's delivery with one. Mm-hmm. You have a weight limit that you can't deal with, right? You just can't. And so I think the discussion is, and again, this isn't like a super in-depth blah, blah, blah. There's so much to do here. We have to understand that there is studies in fairness being done right now to actually understand and compare what's going on, because this is going to become a big thing, especially if we can figure out how to translate this into third world countries, right? And if they can start ordering some of the technology we have logically and getting it sooner, you almost think that we have to be conscious of what are we going to do with all of the packaging. Because, and I'll tell you, if you paid $300 for a desk and it came and it had a nick in it because there was less foam, would you be pissed? Would you want to send it back? Or ask for money back?
We've become accustomed to that, but yeah. I mean, that's one of those things. I was just going to say, just an interesting tidbit there is that the like the third world country idea of like growing their infrastructure and their growth on this topic, when most of like the environmental impact of all of this kind of stuff is done by a couple of countries that are the most industrialized, who are doing most of this packaging, most of this shipping, and most of this manufacturing. And so like the carbon sink and like the environmental impact on like a lot of this kind of stuff, it's like there's a few countries that are doing most of it. And then shipping is also gross because like these huge ships or whatever moving things around, it's like they burn the fuel they burn is just fuel oil. It's just terrible. And so like those couple of things, like there's some really, really easily adjustable, fixable, and concentratable things that are associated with this. And then like bringing in like all of the other countries that are going to be building their infrastructure, it may be easier for them to build the infrastructure with green energy as like a conscious fact of their growth, which it may be even easier to build up those countries that don't have anything yet than it will be to change the crazy stuff that we've had of this like exuberance existence and the current industrialized world that may be harder to change over from what we've always just driven everywhere and that kind of stuff. Like I don't know, there's like some interesting resistance to change management philosophies that are going to be involved in this that I think are really cool. And it's gonna be weird to see where it goes.
Fair enough. I'm excited. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited by this, and I think it's like something that
it's job security for me.
really, we need to honestly take a good look at.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so on to our quick saves. You got 4 minutes, everyone. So, my dog howls. I don't know about your dog, Hannah, but my dog howls.
Neither. They bark, but they don't howl.
Not even at sirens? Nothing?
Nope. They don't give a shit about sirens. They give a shit about your dog and if you're in our front yard.
Wow.
That sounds like my cat.
So, the last dog that we adopted is 2 now, and he's a pit bull boxer / German Shepherd mix, essentially. And here I'll show you. I hate doing that because it gives names away. I won't do it. But my wife posted a picture of him howling, and he will do it when you play a clarinet or when there's sirens. And I'll tell you what, like I'm dead serious. Like we were sitting in the living room on Saturday playing video games, playing that Bowser game. And in the distance, there's an ambulance and a fire truck. You can hear them with the sirens going. And the fire station is not very far from my house. So if they go east, they always pass my house 1 street up every time. And my dog does this. He's like,
oh man.
oh. And then all of a sudden he goes, and he'll just howl to the moon and back. For it.
It's cute when you're a deaf person, you can turn your ears off and you can just go to bed when they're doing that.
Oh, all right. Fair enough.
Weird flex, but okay.
Yeah. Hey, dude.
But I looked up the science behind it, and it's all because of they were wolves, right? Like they all evolved from that lineage. And because that's how wolves use a way to detect when somebody's lost. So what that means is Hannah's dogs are so far removed from the evolutionary chain that
they don't even want to save each other.
be another breed.
Yeah, my dogs are useless. Hitch eats poop, and Bella just tries to kill everything. They're not part of a pack at all. They're just bad.
Fair enough. But anyway, I thought it was funny.
That's cool.
I don't know.
Careful, you'll start a howl. What was that movie? Zootopia? Careful, you'll start a howl.
Yeah. We'll see if it comes up. Can you hear it?
It says it's playing picture in picture. No, I don't hear anything.
All right.
But I don't usually hear anything.
I don't hear anything either, and I usually do hear stuff. So, Mr. Funny Pants down there.
There's an absolutely awesome video of a little girl like screaming in her backyard, and there's like a big husky howling with her. It's I almost shared it today, but like I'm almost suspicious that it's fake because it's too perfect, and that's a good thing to have.
I don't know. I don't think they're as fake as you think they are. But
this one looks really, really real, which makes me suspicious.
Oh my god! All right. So what, Hannah? What was yours? Because that sounds a lot more better than what you have.
This is insane. Okay, scroll down a little bit, and you can see what it has in there. Ohio. It says right there. It says that Ohio in the state of Ohio, it said there shall be no slavery in this state. Nor in voluntary servitude unless for the punishment of crime. In Ohio, in the state of Ohio, it is legal still on the books. Nobody actually uses this, and nobody claims that this is the thing that they can do. But if you are punishing a crime, it is still legal to force someone into slavery. And there's a group of people working on that. You know, like you hear the stories of blue laws, like you can't move your furniture unless you notify the Chamber of Commerce or whatever ridiculous laws that some cities have. Well, this is one that still exists, and it's a big one. It's a thing that was overlooked that you know it deals with the Ohio Constitution, and the fact that it's been outlawed and abolished in the national Constitution obviously renders this null and void. But it's one of those things like having a state constitution and having a state government, and having a document of Ohio. You kind of wanted to not say slavery is okay for this thing.
Yeah.
And so there are people that are looking at and working on creating an amendment, or essentially creating a way to strike this language. And I totally and wholly support it. But it's one of those things that you read about and you're like, okay, I get like the weird laws about like, you can't sell alcohol from Aldi on Sunday afternoon or until noon because of X, Y, Z. But like, they're like, yeah, if you punched someone's daughter, then as a legal punishment, you are now in charge of their life. Like, what? That's insane.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? So like, it's just like a weird thing. It's obviously not allowed in the United States Constitution. Therefore, it's not allowed in Ohio's Constitution, but it's still legally written in it. And there's still probably people in Ohio that are like, I like that. And so like removing that is another part of us working our way through, our dark past and dark history. Sexy lady Zippo. Okay, this is weird.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like opening this up just makes me angry because it's like, what the fuck, dude?
Yes. Okay. So that one aside, so you guys were asking what we were doing for Valentine's Day, and I deliberately withheld that because I knew I was going to be explaining myself a little while later. So last night, my brother-in-law has shared some very interesting channels with my wife and I that we have spent hours, days, weeks going down the rabbit hole of. And one of them was Steve 1989's MRE Reviews, and last night was Awesome Restorations. And we didn't end up watching just this guy's channel, but several others. This guy is from Sweden. And what he does is he takes, as you can see, rusted, he does a lot of lighters. I think Zippo is kind of a big sponsor of his, just on the number of lighters that he seems to restore. But if you look down in the bottom row there, the uploads, he's got a restoration like a recent Buzz Lightyear toy, the antique hatchet with the awesome Viking drawings that he put onto it. What he does is he goes through and he kind of walks you through the steps that he goes through to, take these that are covered in rust and years of decay, and he gets rid of all that, cleans it up, and basically makes it almost as good as new as best he can. Another one that we ended up, so we literally spent like a good 4 or 5 hours last night watching all of this. There was another one that my wife found that actually ended up with me learning something else, and that was that there is a reverse oxidization process that an oxidization process that goes on when you have hydrogen peroxide under UV lights. So he doesn't do any talking. He puts some subtitles casually, but for the most part, you're just watching him as he goes through the simple steps that he does to restore these, and it is so damn cool to watch and so satisfying.
I don't know, man.
Dude, I wholly and totally agree with Keith on this one. This is right up nerd and engineer and machinist alley. This guy's videos, they're good, but the guys that My Mechanics, so this is another channel that does something very similar. There's a whole YouTube world of people cleaning up stuff. And the biggest thing is like there's a tactile and audio thing that hearing the files.
It's ASMR.
It's something that everyone gets into, and it's a really big deal. Yeah, ASMR. Don't careful. That's a weird rabbit hole that will take you down places you might not be comfortable with.
Don't look that up on Pornhub.
Yes, but like my favorite is My Mechanics, but this one, the black neoprene glove guy, he's good. He's good. I think my guy's better, and I would love to see your if you think mine's better, My Mechanics over, because like, I am dude,
totally okay with this.
Because I've watched him, and like the machining that he does, it's legit. Like everything that they have. So like some of them you see them and they're just like they're skipping steps and doing stuff that makes you frustrated if you know that kind of world. And as soon as I saw your topic, I was just like, oh come on, that's good stuff right there. Oh no, are we gonna hear it? Are we gonna hear it? My Dalmatian used to do the same thing. That's awesome. Hey, there's a rapist.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I don't. It's because one time, man. One time I look up their videos and I get his shit. It is so infuriating, and that's a whole different thing. Like people question me and talk about like this cancel culture thing, and it's like, well, what
I have no problem canceling Marilyn Manson.
You want to know something shitty? You want to know how I haven't listened to a Tool album in a month and a half? About a month.
Oh.
You know why?
What?
Because there's a gentleman named Derek from the Satanist group that I'm in, and when the whole Manson thing came out, he's like, well, fuck Tool, fuck this, fuck that. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. What about Maynard? Holy shit, bro. There's some fucking shit on Maynard that you wouldn't believe. Maynard is a piece of shit. And it makes this whole thing like you're just like, oh, no. That's like the guy, like, but that's the whole point. It's like, it's not cancel culture anymore, right? It's me understanding the fact that some of my heroes just weren't meant to be heroes, A. B, we should stop putting fucking people on a fucking pedestal and just appreciate them for what they can do.
Everybody can fall, period.
Yeah.
Nobody is above. Even the Orange King.
All right, well, I mean, look at Woody Harrelson, or not Woody Harrelson. What's his name? Woody Allen. Everybody loves Woody Allen, but I'll tell you what, that dude's a fucking child molester, man.
He married
He's funny. He's got some good movies. He's a child molester, though.
He married his stepdaughter or adoptive daughter. Yeah,
adoptive daughter. But yeah, you understand what I'm saying. So like I said, it is what it is. I understand I understand the hesitancy in cancel culture, but I'll tell you what, like, for somebody like me who really doesn't give two shits about whether Gina is on The Mandalorian or not, I do care about whether I can listen to Manson or fucking Tool again. And it's a hard road. And I think the difference is when people come out and openly admit these are the mistakes I've made. I'm not going to incriminate myself, but by the way, I was a shitty person. This is what I've done to make reprimands, and here's what I'm actively doing to turn my life around. That's the difference, because cancel culture, and now I'm getting on a soapbox, but cancel culture is not about
cancel culture on the
people.
outro.
It's never about canceling people. It's about changing people for the better and to make a society as fair as possible. Thank you also for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week with another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Have a good night, everyone.